The war had raged for 7 cycles across the Andorian sector, and the Kreth Empire had never tasted defeat. Warlord Zexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Render, watching the last human outpost through the view screen. The fortress hung in space like a stubborn ember refusing to be extinguished. Pathetic, Zexthul rumbled, his forearms crossed behind his chitinous back. One species, one world, one miserable rock they call Earth, and still they resist. His tactical officer, a nervous Vorthak named Kelix, approached with trembling claws. "My lord, our intelligence suggests this outpost houses their military commander, Admiral Sarah Chen. Perhaps if we—" Silence. Zexthul's voice could freeze plasma. "I know who she is. The ghost of Proxima, the human who turned our own gravity weapons against us at Kepler Station." His mandibles clicked with something resembling respect. "Today she kneels." The human outpost was a marvel of desperate engineering, a fusion of salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Admiral Chen stood in the command center, her weathered face betraying nothing as she watched the Kreth Armada position itself for the final assault. Behind her, Lieutenant Rodriguez was frantically coordinating with the few remaining human colonies scattered across the galaxy. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out, "Earth Command is requesting an immediate status report. They want to know if we need evacuation protocols." Chen's laugh was dry as ancient paper. "Tell Earth Command that humans don't evacuate. We adapt." The Ubar communication channel crackled to life, and Zexthul's image filled the screen. Even through the distortion, his presence was overwhelming. 3 meters of scaled armor and barely contained fury. "Human Admiral," his voice reverberated through the station's hull. "I am Warlord Zexthul, conqueror of the Rigel systems, destroyer of the Centauri Federation. Your species has caused me considerable inconvenience, but I am not without mercy." Chen stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the alien's holographic presence. "I'm listening. Surrender now, and I will grant your people swift deaths. Continue this futile resistance, and I will ensure every human suffers for 1,000 years before their final breath." The command center fell silent. Through the viewports, the assembled Kreth fleet stretched beyond the horizon. Thousands of ships that had crushed civilizations older than human recorded history. Any rational being would have seen the futility of resistance. Chen looked at the display showing Earth's coordinates, at the blue marble that had spawned a species too stubborn to know when they were beaten. She thought of her daughter playing in the gardens of New Geneva, of the terraforming crews on Mars, of the deep space explorers who had pushed into the galactic rim with nothing but fusion rockets and dreams. She leaned closer to the microphone, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. No. The single word seemed to echo across space itself. Zexthul's eyes narrowed, confusion flickering across his features. "Did you say—" "I said no," Chen repeated, louder now. "Humans don't surrender to bullies. We never have. We never will." Something changed in that moment. Not in the tactical situation, the human outpost was still outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Not in the physical reality, the Kreth ships still commanded overwhelming firepower. But in the quantum foam that underlies all reality, something shifted. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez felt it first in her laboratory beneath CERN. The exotic matter she'd been studying for the past decade suddenly stabilized, its impossible properties snapping into focus. Across the solar system, human ships detected massive gravitational anomalies. The experimental FTL drives that had failed for generations suddenly hummed to life. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered, staring at his instruments, "something's happening. Quantum fluctuations are off the charts. It's like space itself is responding to something." Chen smiled grimly. "Rodriguez, have you ever heard of quantum entanglement?" "Yes, ma'am. Particles that remain connected, regardless of distance. What if I told you that every human in the galaxy just became quantumly entangled with every other human? That our collective refusal to bow created a resonance in the universal field itself?" On the view screen, Zexthul was shouting orders as his sensors detected impossible readings. Human ships, vessels that had been crippled or destroyed, were suddenly reappearing throughout the galaxy, not as physical reconstructions, but as quantum echoes made manifest by the sheer force of human defiance. The phenomenon spread exponentially. Every human who had ever lived, every dream they had carried, every refusal to accept defeat, it all crystallized into a single galactic no that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in its vicinity. Zexthul watched in growing horror as his own ships began to malfunction. The Kreth had conquered through fear, through overwhelming force, through the simple mathematics of superior numbers. But they had never encountered a species that could make reality itself take sides. "Impossible," he growled. "The universe doesn't work this way." Chen's image appeared on his screen, and for the first time in his 1,000-year life, the warlord felt something he'd never experienced: doubt. "You're right," she said calmly. "The universe doesn't work this way, but humans do. We've been breaking the rules since we first looked at the stars and decided we belong there. We've been saying no to impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees and decided to tame fire." The space around Earth began to glow with quantum fire as the collective will of humanity reached critical mass. Every human colony, every ship, every outpost suddenly found themselves connected by invisible threads of determination that transcended the known laws of physics. Zexthul realized, with the clarity that comes only in moments of absolute defeat, that he had made a fundamental error. He had assumed that humans were like every other species, that they would calculate odds, weigh options, and choose survival over principles. He had forgotten that humans were the species that had once stood before their own extinction and decided to punch their way through it. They were the beings who looked at the vacuum of space and called it an ocean to be sailed. They were the creatures who saw death itself as just another challenge to overcome. As his fleet began to disintegrate under the weight of humanity's collective refusal to accept defeat, Zexthul understood that he hadn't been fighting a military force. He had been fighting an idea, and ideas once set loose in the universe are impossible to kill. The last thing he saw before his ship was consumed by quantum fire was Admiral Chen's smile, small, tired, but absolutely unbreakable. In the silence that followed, the only sound was the whisper of a word that had just reshaped the galaxy. "No."